Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced that federal prosecutors will be seeking the death penalty in the case of Dylann Roof, the now 22-year-old who shot and killed 9 parishioners at a church in South Carolina last year. Roof will appear in state and federal court, both of which are death penalty trials, facing charges of murder as well as committing hate crimes. So in addition to the statement that Loretta Lynch released, there was also in a separate U.S. District Court, there was a 7-page filing in Charleston in which federal prosecutors listed the factors as to why they're seeking the death penalty in this case. They have this to say in the filing, quote, Roof has expressed hatred and contempt towards African Americans as well as other groups, and his animosity towards African Americans played a role in the murder. Roof demonstrated a lack of remorse and targeted men and women participating in a Bible study group at the Emmanuel AME Church in order to magnify the societal impact. So this is up after previously the South Carolina local county prosecutor, Scarlett Wilson, she'd already said that she was going to seek the death penalty. The governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, followed that up and backed up that choice. So this is, of course, in regards to Dylann Roof, 22 years old. He shot up the famously, historically African-American church, the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, and he currently faces 9 counts of murder in state court as well as 3 counts of attempted murder. But then in federal court, he faces hate crimes and being in possession of arms that fulfilled these crimes. So what do you think off the bat?
Well, off the bat, first and foremost, I mean, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I do not mind seeing this person rotting in jail.
Right.
This is a man who knew what he's doing. He's 22 years old. He's old enough to know. This is not somebody who is safe to be out in the streets. We need to make sure this man is locked up for a very long time. But it's a very high-profile case, and it's really raised the question about the death penalty in this country. And depending on where you stand, I mean, do you want to see this guy rot in jail, or should we kill him? I mean, it's a very difficult conversation to have, no matter who you're talking about. But I think for the state, it's going to be impossible to please everybody because you have the family members who obviously want to see this guy dead.
Well, what's interesting
and it raises other moral and ethical questions as well. So it's like, where do you?
Sure. Well, when this first took place, a lot of the family members of the victims, they kind of moved the country by how forgiving they were. You know, it was a lot of kind of like, may God have mercy on your soul, this kind of thing. But since then, the prosecutors have been interacting with the relatives, and I think some people's tunes have been changed. For example, Stephen Hurd, whose wife Cynthia was murdered in the attacks, he has this to say. He says, "What would give me full closure would be if I were the one who pushed the plunger on the lethal injection, or if I were the one to pull the switch on the electric chair, or if I was the one to open the valve on the gas chamber. When Roof's body is cold, sleeping in the ground, that's closure." So, when you hear something like that, that's obviously coming from a very emotional point of view, but I think that absolutely raises the question of when capital punishment is appropriate. So
right, but also what capital punishment should be.
Right.
Because perhaps, Dylann Roof spending the rest of his life and dying in jail could also be seen as capital punishment, even though there's nobody, turning on that electric chair or giving him that lethal injection.
Right, exactly. Well, and initially, Roof actually pleaded not guilty to the 33 accounts, the indictments that he was faced, and now he's saying, or his defense attorneys rather, are saying that he would plead guilty if the death penalty was not on the table. So, I mean, it's very interesting. Also, in South Carolina, there have been no executions since 2011. That is partly due to the fact that they can't get the lethal injection medicine, or medicine as the drugs rather. We've done some stories about that, about botched executions in general. But then also, the federal government hasn't put anybody to death since 2003. So it's interesting that he's not only facing death penalty in a state court, but also a federal court. So that's why it seems like it's just a very symbolic case. Again, whether or not you agree with capital punishment, the fact that this was such an egregious crime and was clearly based in hate and racism, that's, it created so many new questions.
And of course, even questions, about society. I mean, whether or not we should have certain flags up, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Confederate flag being removed from the State House, for example.
So, I mean, yeah, look, as long as, this guy has not shown any mercy in any way. I mean, we were talking about this during our meeting today. I mean, we were talking about how, when he was picked up by the police initially without any incident, they put him in the car, drove him to Burger King, took him to prison. I mean, as long as there's no leniency given, as long as he's, not given any breaks, I think everybody would sleep a little better. But like I said, it's going to be impossible for this state to come out with the right decision and make everybody happy.
Exactly. I mean, even Bernie Sanders has commented about this case in particular. He's been very outspoken against capital punishment, but a spokesman on behalf of Bernie Sanders says, again, that he opposes the death penalty. He believes that people should be just spending life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, they kind of share similar stances, where Barack Obama, he finds capital punishment deeply troubling, but also rationalizes that, there are certain crimes that are so beyond the pale that, you understand why people are outraged. Hillary Clinton has said the same thing with certain egregious crimes. So, yeah, I mean, I honestly don't even know where I stand in this, because this was such an immensely hateful crime. At the same time, it's so strange to be like, yeah, I want the state to fry this kid. You know what I mean?
Right. No, exactly. And I'm also against the killing of people, of prisoners, as far as capital punishment, for the reason that, what if you get the wrong guy? There's always that idea of what you get the wrong guy. Now, in situations like this, we know who did it. We know exactly who was behind it. So that's a little different. But in general, I think I'm against it. But yeah, having somebody in jail is a different story, and letting them live out their life in jail, that's a different story. But.
Exactly. Well, interested what you guys think. Federal and state prosecutors are seeking the maximum penalty in the case of Dylann Roof. Do you think that's just?